There's a new street fighter on your windowsill. The weapon is peace, the word is chill.
Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Let's talk Cleatus Cassidy, Carnage. This is the first of a trilogy I'm going to do. It's the Cleatus Cassidy Carnage saga. We are going to do his first appearance, his first big story arc. Then we're going to move on to, oh my god, the one story I've been waiting to cover since I started this show, Maximum Carnage. And then finally we're going to wrap it up with Absolute Carnage, which is going to be a barn burner of an episode. So we got the Carnage trilogy kicking off with the mid-90s, well, early 90s. Was it 93? Give or take, it was somewhere around there. First appearance of Carnage. And this is right slap bang dab in the middle of my personal favourite Spider-Man era. We've got Mark Bagley doing the artwork. We've got JMD Mateus cranking out incredible stories along with, I think we're just off the back of Michelini's run as well. I get confused, but it's a good time to be alive and a good time to be a Spider-Man fan. But it is not a good time to be the poor dude in Carnage's opening scene. It's great because we don't really get a big introduction of like the step-ups towards Carnage. We just get Carnage. We get an opening splash of this dude, the Mark Bagley looking Carnage, just there instantly. It's like, we're not going to beat around the bush. This is the new big bad, and he's going to murder a lot of people and cause a whole lot of, dare I say, carnage. You see, the name fits the character. And he just wastes this guy. And already we see little elements of Carnage that would make him very much his own thing. We see the way his symbiote will move and form shapes and objects and stabbing weapons. And it's like, this is an expanded version of what Venom is. This isn't just another Venom. This is a new, it's like a good version or a good person who plays a improv game. It's not just like, yes, it's yes and. It's, yes, this is Venom, and he does this, and he's different because he does that. I love the fact that Carnage is a smaller version of Venom. That's what's cool. I hate when someone thinks that, oh, Carnage will just do him. He's like Venom, but red and bigger and tougher. It's like, no. Carnage should be like this little evil goblin covered in razor blades. Like, that's what Carnage should be. Like this little demonic sprite that will just cut you into pieces. That's cool. Just a bigger, roidier version of Venom. That's not so exciting. And I hope that Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage doesn't go in that direction. But I kind of think it will. We'll wait and see. But the first view that we get of Carnage in this comic is cool, it's scary, it's a great way to kick off this story, which then transitions. I love how they did this transition of the Carnage mouth into the grate of the furnace in Peter Parker's basement or Aunt May's basement. I think that's such a great little transition. You know that if this was a cartoon or a film, that would be a great fade across. And we get introduced to, well, not introduced, but we get to see Peter and Mary Jane. I'm going to bring out Mary Jane here because what I love about 90s Mary Jane is that she's not a damsel in distress. She's not a fridge type character. She's not just there to facilitate storylines. She is absolutely Peter Parker's rock. And I think this is why so many people are Peter and MJ stans. Did I use that term correctly? I think I did. Because MJ, throughout the 90s, she's not just his damsel. She is his point of stability. She is there for him when he needs it and he confides in her. And she really does facilitate him being Spider-Man. You could argue in a lot of stories, Peter Parker couldn't do what he does without the support network that he has. And Mary Jane is the absolute center of that. So she's wonderful. And they have this conversation based around Venom and how he's kind of on the back burner now, because with Venom posed an interesting problem for the creators in the mid-90s because they had made this cool character, but the problem was that he knew who Peter Parker was and he was obsessed with killing him, or at least tormenting him and then killing him. So the problem is, what do you do with that character when you're not using him in a story? So they had to find ways of kind of writing Venom out without killing him off, and that was tricky. So they had one story where the symbiote gets destroyed, or it looks like the symbiote gets destroyed. That writes him out for a bit. And there's bits where, he'll be sort of knocked out or incapacitated. They always have to come up with ways of having Venom not actively being after Peter Parker. So one thing they did was they had him separated from the symbiote. We thought the symbiote had been destroyed, and Eddie Brock was in prison. He was just in a regular prison for regular psychopaths, because he didn't have any superpowers on his own, besides being tough as nails. So he is sharing a cell with Cleatus Cassidy. And in there the problem lies. Now it actually turns out, years from now, with more and more stories, that there's a whole backstory with Carnage and Null and the symbol of the spiral, and kind of like Cleatus Cassidy was always... excuse me. Cleatus Cassidy was always destined to become Carnage. He was destined to become the emissary of Null. And I'm not a big fan of Destiny-type storylines because it takes away any free will that characters have. It's like, well, sorry, this is just what was always going to happen. But Carnage, Cleatus, he shares a cell with Eddie Brock, so when the symbiote returns and it bonds with Brock and Brock breaks out of the cell, it leaves behind a little spawn offspring, which of course bonds with this guy, and the rest is history. So, all the reports are happening in the newspapers that there are all of these murders and people being horribly, gruesomely killed by something that fits the description of a symbiote. And at the moment, Venom is out of the picture once again. When he did break out and spawned the Carnage symbiote, he again went and attacked Peter. And what happened was, he took Peter to this deserted island because he wanted to be alone with him. He didn't want anyone to interfere. He didn't want Peter to have backup. And how Peter eventually escaped from this, and it's a little bit comic booky, but we'll go with it. They have a fight, and it's discovered that there's a whole bunch of ammunition and explosives on this island. I think maybe it used to be a military facility or something like that. And either way, Peter essentially fakes his own death. He sets things up so that it looks like he's died in an explosion. And actually, Venom, you can't credit him for having too much common sense. I'll say the symbiote was, messing with his mind, because there's a huge big explosion, and Venom finds a skeleton with the Spider-Man costume shredded around it. And, you have to kind of take the leap of logic that Venom's gone, wow, this explosion was so powerful that it vaporized every ounce of flesh off this skeleton. But it did leave just enough of the costume for me to identify that it's definitely Spider-Man. And as dubious as that sounds, Venom's satisfied. And Eddie Brock is like, well, I'm just going to live out the rest of my life in peace on this island, in the knowledge, happy that my archenemy is dead and buried. And that's where he is. So Peter's like, if Venom is out, I gotta take care of this guy. And Mary Jane asks the one question that all readers would be asking as well, which is, why don't you just call the Avengers or the Fantastic Four? Get some more people in on this. And Peter Parker's like, nah, it'll be fine. We get the classic line of, no, Venom is my responsibility. If anyone's going to deal with this, it has to be me. And honestly, it's like, come on, Peter, this is New York. You can't move without bumping into a superhero. You could get a little more backup. But either way, he goes it alone and he investigates all of these murders. And he finds news reports about Cleatus Cassidy. And it's not difficult to put two and two together. He finds that Cleatus Cassidy escaped from prison shortly after Eddie Brock did, and that when he did, the guard in the prison was somehow pulled through the bars of the jail cell. Lovely. So Peter's like, okay, this sounds similar, and it doesn't take a scientist to put some of these clues together. And he goes and he tracks down Cleatus Cassidy. He goes to, I believe it's the orphanage where Cleatus was raised. And he's like, okay, this makes sense. A little bit of detective work on Peter. Get out of here, Batman. World's greatest detective? Whatever. So Spidey goes and he finds Cleatus and he's like, great, I'll be home in 5 minutes. So he goes and attacks, and of course, Carnage gets his debut pro match. Basically, he's been killing off jobbers. Now he's got a real challenge, and he handily takes care of Spider-Man because Spidey doesn't know what to expect. He thinks it's like, oh, it's another Venom, but hey, this guy's a bit smaller, probably won't be as difficult, and Carnage just wrecks shop, and he nearly straight up murders Peter. It is not a pretty picture. Peter gets jobbed out big time, but before Carnage can lay in any killing blows, the police show up. Carnage attacks the police. We see more of his crazy kind of powers, what he can do. We see the classic Carnage axe hand in effect here. We see him firing out bits of the symbiote like little darts and blades and daggers. So we get a full kind of rundown of what Carnage can do at this point. Let's face it, Carnage would go on to have all sorts of crazy powers, but here we see that he at least has the symbiote, but he can use it in different ways and means that Venom could. And with the distraction of the police showing up, Carnage uses that as an excuse to just jump out and carry on with his random murder spree. But still, it's a hell of an introduction for Peter Parker. He's like, whoa, I did not expect that, I was not ready for that, I might be in trouble. So realizing that he might not be able to go this alone, he figures that, you know what? I'm gonna get my friend Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, the guy who controls fire. What a perfect guy to use against Carnage. No, wait, no, he doesn't do that. He gets his friend Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, the guy who can control fire, and says, can you help me get my other arch nemesis Venom? Because, hey, if one psychotic maniac symbiote who wants to kill me isn't bad enough, let's get two. Again, the leaps in logic are like a little bit dubious, but it's comic books. We want cool things to happen, and if there's just enough logic to precipitate that, I'll go with it. So he and Johnny Storm fly out in the little Fantastic Car to go and recruit Venom, and Peter's like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea. In hindsight, it wasn't. But they turn up to the island where Venom is, and as soon as Spider-Man shows up, he's like, we've got Eddie, and Eddie's just chilling. He's just chilling like a villain, and he's just happy that, oh look, what a beautiful sunset, the sky is blue, the waves are crashing, the birds are approaching me in a car. Oh, it's the Fantastic... No way. He's like, no, you can't be Spider-Man, we killed you, we definitely killed you, we evaporated all of you except for a little piece of your costume and... Oh, son of a bitch. So I think the penny drops and Venom attacks Spider-Man. He attacks the Human Torch. And this is kind of cool, actually. Again, this is really at a time where they want to make Venom this big bad. It's not just Spider-Man who he can take out. So even with Johnny Storm using his fire powers, Venom can still get the better of him at various occasions. And actually, he starts to drown him underwater. And Johnny uses his Nova Flame to just explode out. You know, he goes full on, not just Human Torch, but he goes full on supernova in order to blast the symbiote away. So it does show how tough Venom is. And Peter eventually manages to talk Eddie down. And he's like, look, I know you want to kill me. All right, for whatever reason, get over it. But still, if I came back here, it had to be for a good reason. And obviously it was. Don't know why I'm holding Human Torch when I'm saying this. Obviously it was. So he explains the situation and Venom's like, all right. But I tell you what, if I come back to New York, once we're done with this, you're going to let me go free. And it's like, oh, talk about a deal with the devil, but what can you do? So all three of them return to New York to go and face Carnage. Now, while Peter has had his hands full trying to recruit Venom, Carnage has still been going around New York, killing various people. There's some logic and nuance behind it, but really not much. He's just enjoying a good old-fashioned murder spree. So then Peter and Venom turn up, and we get some really cool splash pages of just Spider-Man and Venom swinging through the city together. And this is the first time they've been on the same page, both literally and figuratively. And it looks cool. Just these two characters teaming up, swinging around the city. Nothing feels more 90s than that. And with the Mark Bagley art, chef's kiss, mwah! So good. And they track down Carnage, and we get, finally, our big three-way battle of Spider-Man, Carnage, and Venom. And it's like, bring it on. And it's really cool. It's so great to see these guys all throwing down together for the first time. And eventually Carnage, he's not really on the ropes. He's just like, I'm bored with this. So what do you do for a decent distraction? Throw a baby. Yep. Carnage just picks up a baby and hurls it out the window, and he's like, you might want to go fetch that. It's like, oh, what a heel. So that's his perfect distraction to get away. And again, they kind of emphasize he doesn't do this because he's wanting to escape. He's just like, I can't be bothered to fight you guys now. There's more killing to do, and I just love killing. So Peter and Venom go out and rescue the baby. And I'm sure you're wondering at this point, where's Johnny Storm? Can't he just turn up and help them? Can't they get more of a posse together? Yes and no. Because that's not what this story is about. And look, sometimes I think this is a leap of logic you have to just accept in the Marvel Universe. There are so many heroes out there that pretty much any villain could just be dogpiled in a second. But where would the fun, where would the story be? It's not about massive groups fighting and stuff. This is a more personal story. So they come up with some reason to just say, hey, Johnny Storm, he's got to peace, I'm out of here. But it's at least kind of covered with a, hey, I have to go and do this thing. I want to be here, but I can't, leaving it to just Spidey and Venom. But now, of course, we enter into the final act. So in the final chapter here, we get the introduction of Carnage and J. Jonah Jameson, two very much Spider-Man villains and as different a characters as you could possibly imagine. So yeah, they're both thorns in Spider-Man's side, one slightly more murderous than the other. But Carnage wants to make an example of J. Jonah Jameson. He's like, you stand for law and order, and you're always telling people how justice should prevail, and, you know, good will triumph and all that kind of thing, and right and wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And Carnage is like, so I'm just gonna kill you and make a spectacle of you. How about that? So he kidnaps poor old J. Jonah Jameson here, who, for a guy his age, has been through a lot, but it doesn't seem to faze him too much. And Peter and Eddie, they're trying to work out, okay, where is Carnage going to go? He's going to want to make a big spectacle. He's going to want to do something. And they find a person who has been inserted through a brick wall in the street. So they're like, well, that looks like Carnage's MO. And they start questioning the people all around them. And Peter sees a huge big poster for a heavy metal rock concert. And that's kind of funny because it's a very comic booky logic kind of thing where it's like, heavy metal rock. Yeah, bad people like that. You know, evil people love heavy metal music. And this isn't Marvel trying to be like a, you know, staunch conservative kind of like, oh, rock music bad. It's just a very 90s kind of easy trope. It's like, this guy's a heavy metal monster. He's going to like rock music. He's probably going to go to Madison Square Garden. And I do like the fact that they use literally Madison Square Garden. That's what I love about the Marvel Universe. It's our universe. If you're going to go to a huge big stadium in New York, of course it's going to be MSG. So Carnage turns up at the concert and he kind of hijacks it with Jonah, and it's kind of funny, you know, he kind of gets on the mic and he's like, hey, what's up New York? We're going to kill a lot of people. Luckily, Spider-Man and Venom get there. They have a huge big throwdown. They go through the floor of Madison Square Garden and end up in the subway. Carnage gets thrown onto the subway tracks and kind of explodes into flame. But of course, that's not going to do it because he's double tough. They do sort of make the point of Venom saying, hey, look, because this symbiote was gestated on Earth, it's kind of different, it has different powers. That's why it's like he's smaller but stronger. They make it clear that Carnage is badder than Venom, which is kind of good that they make that distinction. So Carnage just like, you know, brushes off the whole frying on a subway line and comes back and again starts to tear into them, and they're like, we are struggling here. I think we might be outmatched. So Peter gets the bright idea to go up into the sound booth and basically crank up all the sound, put it at the pitch that he knows the symbiotes can't stand, and he fires out this frequency, which then starts to destroy and disrupt the two symbiotes. I mean, in fairness, going to the one place that has loud noises is probably not the best idea of Carnage. But then again, he was a young symbiote who probably didn't realize how vulnerable he would be to that. So that kind of makes sense. And this is the really great moment of character development and nuances that I love so much. The sound is blasting out and it's killing both Venom and Carnage. And Venom actually, you know, he screams out, don't stop. And that's kind of a cool sort of corner-turning hero type moment where Eddie is like, this is killing me, but it's also stopping Carnage, so you've got to keep doing this. And then eventually, yeah, the sound just obliterates the Carnage symbiote. Yeah, kind of. And then, you know, it's just Cleatus, he's lying there unconscious, and Venom is like, okay, he's down, turn off the music. And this is the other wrinkle we get. Spider-Man says, no, I'm sorry, I can't. Basically, I lied, essay. Instead of letting Venom go, he's like, no, I'm sorry, I've got you on the ropes. Whether we made a deal or not, you are a killer. I'm gonna have to leave this on until we can subdue you. And Venom's like, the hell you are! So he attacks Peter with the symbiote kind of flailing off of him, and he's like, how dare you? Like, we made a deal and you've betrayed me again? You've proven to me that you are as duplicitous and evil as I'm convinced you are? That's what was classically tragic about this. Like, Venom just got proven right. Peter proved to Eddie that he is everything Eddie thought he was. And it's like, oh wow, there are no easy answers. And then just before Venom can kill Peter, we get the introduction of Mr. Fantastic. He shows up with his sonic gun, which is great because they introduced the sonic gun years ago when dealing with the symbiote, before there was even Venom, when Peter was just trying to get the symbiote off of him. So it's cool that Mr. Fantastic turns up with that gun. I guess that's where Johnny went off to do. He went to get Reed. Reed shows up, blasts Venom with the sonic gun, and they capture him. And the ending is, it's just heartbreakingly brilliant. Spider-Man, he's been through hell. He broke his word. Carnage has killed a whole bunch of people, but he's been subdued. Venom has been captured, and he's like, man, this was a sucky day. And Jonah just gets right into his face, and he's like, you clearly did the wrong thing. You told Venom that you were going to set him free? What is the matter with you? Captain America would have found a way to do it right without lying and without making deals. And Spidey's like, screw you! Screw you! I have done everything in my power to try and fix this, and guess what? I'm not perfect, and that's where I love how Captain America is always held up, whether you like it or not, whether you find it boring as being like a perfect character. I love that they always hold Captain America up as like this virtue of what everyone should aspire to be, and that's what Peter says when he leaves MSG and he leaves the field of battle. He just says, yes, Captain America probably would have found a way, but I'm not Captain America. And he just slumps off, victorious but also defeated. And that was the end of the first ever Carnage story. Oh my giddy lord. We had a whole lot more that would follow in the years and decades afterwards, but this was a great, great introduction to the character. Just 3 issues as well. No crazy crossovers, no tie-ins, no one-shots. Just 3 issues, a really tightly told, good story. Would we continue doing that? Probably not. Because the next one is definitely what you would call a decompressed story. But it's a lot of fun, and this was a lot of fun as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see here and you want to see more, then join the 6-1 Clicks by clicking the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And if you want to go one step beyond in supporting the channel, you can do by going over to patreon.com/displaying model behavior and become a savior of model behavior, just like these folks right here. And also, new little bit of news, I'm going to start some model behavior merchandise. So if you want t-shirts and all that kind of good stuff, you'll be able to find those over at Patreon and also possibly on YouTube as well. I'm looking at expanding the empire. So soon I might be rocking a model behavior t-shirt, and hopefully soon, so can you. And guys, also, what was I going to say? Yes, for folks who are in England, I'm going to be attending Comic-Con in London this coming Sunday, the 21st, I want to say, or 22nd, whatever the next Sunday in October is. I'm going to be at Comic-Con, at the Olympia, is it? I can't remember. I can't remember where I'm going or what the date is. But if you are magically in a place at a time that I am, stop by and say hello. And until then, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Chill. Yeah.
Hello there, guys, and welcome to... that was a dubious start. Cleatus Cassidy, Carnage. This is the... Really? This is what happens when I drink a big cup of tea before making these. It's the bane of any British YouTuber. Cups of tea.